Danial Rahmat, a senior energy security consultant in Iran. Of course, Daniel, based in Tehran, hasn't been with us since before the Israel's attack war on Iran in June. And so it's a unique opportunity to say hi, Daniel. Thank God you're great and you're there and all is well, so to speak. Most importantly, but let's just talk a little bit because OPEC Plus are meeting this weekend, and in their calculations, at the end of a current increase cycle, they've been increasing supply over the last 6 months since before the conflict in June, but now they're apparently considering yet even more increases. And I suppose one thing they'll want to know amongst the long list of things they might look at over the weekend is Iran able to export all of the oil it was able to export in the Biden era, in the Trump era, as Trump clamps down on India and other places? Will finally a vice grip come around Iranian oil exports? Tell us a little bit about how Iran is doing a few months after the war in June, and particularly in relation to Iran's ability to export oil.
Hello, Sean, and hello, everybody. I'm very glad to be here again. And yeah, regarding Iran's production capability, there are two different things, of course, production increase or production capability and exports capacity and the volume of exports. As you know, now almost all Iranian barrels go to China. Um, Iranian production has not has not met the goals and has not increased as the government and the Ministry of Petroleum had promised already. And there are some technical problems with the increasing the production, despite the claims that the ministry is making that they're working very hard to increase the production. Apparently, they have faced some technical problems that would stop them increasing the number of barrels. On the other side, exporting these such amount of oil has faced some different kinds of problems, including the concerns during the Iran-Israel war that ended up in actually flooding some part, and actually the floating storages with huge amounts of oil. And just after that, the exports declined. There are different problems, as I said, technical problems, sanction problems on Chinese refineries and the shadow fleet, and also to the shadow banking system, and which has made the Chinese refineries very concerned about it. And in the long-term prospect, let's say the possibility of return, very serious possibility of the return of the UN sanctions on Iran, despite the disagreements from China and Russia on the legitimacy of the European powers to trigger the snapback option, which takes back all UN sanctions on Iran. These are very serious concerns that would possibly even let the foreign forces, including the American Navy, to stop Iranian tankers actually
But
going
at this
to
point, six
China.
months or so, 5 months, a few months after the war in June, Iranian oil
Mhm.
exports continue at the level they did prior to the war. Is that correct?
No, the volume of Iranian oil departures is the same level, almost a little bit less, but the volume of deliveries to Chinese refiners have declined significantly, let's say. We can understand that from the huge amount of Iranian floating reserves in Malaysian and Indonesian waters. So there are problems with delivering Iranian oil to the Chinese refiners. Let's say something about 35 to 40% decline in some months were cited.
Daniel, just circling back to where we're at in the region a few months after this unprecedented face-off between Israel and Iran. Obviously, Israel attacked Iran, and the U.S. then bombed Iran, and Iran responded and defended itself. But ultimately, from Iran's perspective, do you think, and from Tehran's point of view, is this now over? We had two skirmishes last year, which seemed to be fairly choreographed, more theater than reality. This year looked pretty real, and obviously the impact was pretty real in the ground there in Iran for all of you. Where are we at now? Does this feel like it's over, or is this a pause, or what's your own sense of where the regional positioning is?
And I definitely say that at least on the Israeli side, Benjamin Netanyahu's side, it's not over, and he would very much prefer to escalate the tensions and the war, and his priority would be to drag the U.S. into a full-scale all-out war with Iran because the war in June already proved that Israelis are very actually vulnerable against Iran's missile attacks on their cities and on their infrastructure. So they would not be able to manage it alone. And Benjamin Netanyahu is very much willing to restart the war and take Americans in the middle of this war, maybe even from the very beginning of the next possible wave of Israeli attacks on Iran. But at the same time, there are a lot of other, let's say, trends and activities going on, both in Iran's domestic politics, which the reformist government is trying to take the control of the whole value chain, let's say the whole trade chain of oil, and to manage the money coming back to the country. There are very serious fights between the actually the oil exporting and oil and money. Let's call it the shadow banking system, which takes the money back to the country, which is still under the control of the hardliners, with the government, which is a very serious sign of real changes inside Iran. At the same time, there is a very significant confusion regarding Iran's actually goals in any kind of possible talks with the Americans or Westerns in general, and as I said before, very high risk of snapback activation and taking all the sanctions against Iran. So this is a very confusing and chaotic scene we are facing right now. But in terms of the war, the risk of the war is very high, and this time, most possibly, Benjamin Netanyahu cannot survive if he cannot succeed.
It would appear, Daniel, that since this news broke the other day that OPEC Plus was looking at another increase, oil prices have already started falling and have fallen a few dollars since that first report. But quickly, Daniel, your thoughts on what OPEC will do, should do at this point?
Uh, as Anup said, the economic growth and the oil demand do not necessarily comply with each other. Means that at the moment we're witnessing increasing oil demand, jet fuel demand, gasoline demand here or there, and which is not happening in parallel with an economic growth. That's one of the points that OPEC is considering, and that would somehow pave the way for even more barrels to get into the market. At the same time, I was just reading the quotas of the Saudis' oil allocation to the Chinese market, which is going to decrease significantly for China. So that in September, that would pave the way, open the way for Iranian and Russian oil to find the markets in China. So I think at this moment there is enough demand for the oil, And considering Iran's incapability for increasing its oil production, while the other members have some capacity, we should be waiting for even, let's say, I cannot say huge amounts of more barrels, but more barrels will be added to the market. This is my assumption.